Assalamu alaikum. Today I want to talk about an issue that I see a lot around in the Muslim community, and that is what I call a pathological relationship between the teacher and the student, to a point that you see a student mimicking and imitating the teacher in the way they talk, the way they move their hands, the way they walk, and it's like they want to be a carbon copy of the teacher. And obviously, in some cases, it becomes an extreme. Um, and we see that in some groups. There is the saying, for example, من قال لشيخه لما لم يفلح أبدا. If you ask your teacher why, you never be successful. And this is such an erroneous statement. In fact, if you were to reverse it, then it could become true. That you should be asking your teacher why, and you should train yourself to ask your teacher why, and the teacher should not object for that kind of question. And if they object, that means you've got a bad teacher. Now, in our history, we have examples of good students, if you will, and maybe not so good. In the case of a good student, I think I would bring the example of the students of Imam Abu Hanifa. As we know, the two famous students of Imam Abu Hanifa, Muhammad bin Hassan al-Shaybani and Al-Qadi Abu Yusuf, these are the two common or prominent students of Abu Hanifa. And as Ibn Abidin, a famous Hanafi scholar, wrote in his Al-Hashiyah, he said that these two scholars, Abu Yusuf and Al-Shaybani, they differed with Abu Hanifa by about 1/3 of the madhab. So imagine direct students of Abu Hanifa differing from their teacher by 1/3. And this no doubt came from the fact that he understood the true meaning of being a student and not being a follower or even a blind follower. On the other hand, we have an example that may not be a bright example, and that is one of the students of Imam Malik. And this is nothing to do or nothing to blame or mar the name of Imam Malik, but the fact that one of his students by the name of Ashhab, and Ashhab was in Egypt, when Imam al-Shafi'i, you could also count as a student of Imam Abu Hanifa, by the way. When Imam Shafi'i came to Egypt, when he migrated to Egypt, Ashhab was so scared for the Maliki madhab, to a point that he started making dua against Imam Shafi'i. He started praying for the death of Imam Shafi'i. So to that extent, this is how much sectarianism and how much blinded a madhab can make you. That you follow a particular school of law, a school of theology, whatever it is, and it blinds you to such an extent that you start wishing death upon someone else. So this is just from our past, and we could see the contrast between the two examples. Unfortunately, nowadays, in the present time, I'm afraid to say that the majority of the examples we find are from the latter example, the example where you see fanatical and blind following of the sheikh, of the teacher. So that is the pathological example, to a point that it's hard to see a student who excels and goes beyond the teacher. So as if the teacher has become the bound, it become the ceiling. And the Arabs had a saying, and unfortunately it may not apply anymore. They used to say, رُبَّ تِلْمِيذٍ فَاقَ أُسْتَاذَهُ. How many times you find examples of students who have succeeded, who have excelled, and they have gone beyond their teachers. So they have succeeded and made more success than the teacher himself. So you could find many examples of that, they said. And unfortunately, nowadays you don't see that. In fact, it's hard to see students who who you could say that they are true students even. They're just parrots. They're just repeating what the sheikh said, but they don't have opinions on their own. They don't differ with the teacher, which is a really important quality of the student. Rather, they just become parrots, as I said. And that's a problem, because when I teach you to be my follower, and I teach you what to think instead of teaching you how to think, then that is the problem, and that's the beginning of the problem. And that's a lot of times how we're teaching religion. We're basically feeding and dictating what to believe and what to think, instead of teaching them how to think and the methods of arriving to an opinion or to a conclusion. So this is, I think, in my opinion, very important in order to have any revival, any kind of tajdeed. You need to have these types of independent, free thinkers, instead of having these copycats, these minions. Really, it's like we're having these many minions. You have minions of this sheikh, minions of that sheikh. We have minions of this school. We have minions of that school. And that's what we have. And they're just fighting amongst each other. So this has to change. And I hope this is a small little advice that we all can heed. And I think it was Nietzsche who said that it's a bad compensation for the teacher that his students will always remain students. Think about that. It's a bad compensation for the teacher. Like, you've not paid your teacher back if you remained a student all your life. If you've never gotten out of that shell and became a teacher yourself, then you've not compensated your teacher. You've not lived up to the the ambition of your teacher. So keep that in mind. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.